Perfect.
Sam.
So I guess we're all here. We're going to call the meeting to order. I would ask at this time if there are any agenda additions. Okay, I would ask for approval of the agenda as presented.
Moved.
Okay, it's been moved by the deputy mayor. Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Coyne. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, the agenda is approved. The first item on our agenda is the Municipal Capital Growth Program. So I'm going to hand things over to staff to take council through the updates with regard to this program and options.
Just before we start, Jason's gonna talk us through this. So when we talked about this at the last meeting, there were some assumptions around the estimated cost of the work. And that estimated cost on installing sewer, water, storm sewer into two different types of areas was based on estimates that we had 2 years ago, updated a little bit last year. But the cost of that, for Aspen Close, which we considered at one point in time, council considered at one point in time, was like $389,000. So that would have brought our, even with some adjustment, that would have brought our investment on that side up to $200,000. But so we had some confusion around some estimates at our last meeting. That's because Jason had asked for an update from WSP, who we've been working with, to bring those, ensure that we had enough dollars in there. What's happened as a result of that, those numbers have increased dramatically. And all of a sudden the money that we will have to spend to be able to get this in place and looking at return on investment has changed a lot. So we did look. We're going to present the two options and an altered second option for you as well. But I did want to look at the same time, if that work isn't going to be, if that's not going to work for us, we have some other options as well for application. My thought overall, and we're going to get into the numbers and how that looks. We may be much better off looking at another program for this type of work where there's a less of a contribution from the town. So the 50-50 split makes things pretty expensive for us. If this was typical ICIP, it would be 27%. So we'd be looking at about half the investment that's required. And other municipalities have done that in previous years, not lately, but in previous years. And so that's kind of the heads up on this. But so Jason's going to take us through sort of what we can apply for, what we can apply for, and sort of kind of brief terms there, Jason.
Sure thing. So, based on our last meeting, we were given direction to explore a few options that we spoke about, and just to kind of go into a little bit of detail on the program itself. We've seen this slide already. We know that it is 50-50 funding. The deadline for applications is December 13th. And they want to see a construction component to the projects that are presented. Moving on to the next slide, just kind of outlines the eligible projects that are included. We've seen this one before as well. So water and wastewater projects would be included. In addition to that, accessibility projects are also considered for this funding program as well. It's important to note that we've already heard this, but road reinstatement costs are not applicable if you're kind of building out into undeveloped areas. So moving on to the next slide, Melissa, for Terry. We were given direction to look at Aspen Close costing and an extension to Oak Crescent, and we've done that. So Aspen Close, we're familiar with these areas, R1 residential single unit. The total length of the expansion would be approximately 200 meters. We'd be able to create 15 lots with a typical lot size of 80 by 115. Just for the layout. Oak Crescent extension, we looked at two different options there. One was based on the longer road portion, which is similar to the arrangement that we've seen originally, at about 250 meters. And we also looked at a smaller build-out option for that as well. We're able to squeeze in a similar number of lots with the shorter arrangement. I'll show that in a little more detail, and that's based on working with the topography in the area and the ability to build out more around the cul-de-sac and the shorter arrangement. The lot sizes for the Oak Crescent extension would be a little bit smaller than Aspen Close, based on similar lot sizes in the Tamarack subdivision. So just to go into a little more detail on Aspen Close, next slide. So that's the area, we're all familiar with that. That's an older version of the current condition. We'd be looking at, there's the sketch for the build out, typical cul-de-sac formation. And again, would be 15 lots. And looking at costing for this arrangement. Next slide. For the potential funding dollars that we can apply to this program, the total cost for the project, which we would be able to apply for funding for, would be just over $1.2 million. Looking at additional costs to build out the street, in addition to what we could apply for funding, such as the completion of the road construction work, that's asphalt, curb, landscaping, and installation of electrical communications. That would be an additional $827,000 based on current unit pricing. Next slide, I'll just kind of turn things over to Aaron to talk about the costing summary and payback.
Sure, thanks Jay. So I've included HST in these numbers. Jay's numbers were before HST, so that's why there's a little bit of a variance. So the Municipal Capital Growth Program eligible construction costs would be 1.26 million, would be eligible for 631. But total construction costs with paving would be 2.1 million, which is about 141,000 per lot, which is quite expensive. And just down below, I've kind of looked at a simple cost recovery on our costs. So looking at, an average assessment value there, looking at what lot sale revenue would be, our total construction cost would be 1.5 million to get them saleable, I guess, if we were going to individually sell those lots. And that would be about 13 years to recover the costs of those lots. And that's assuming they're, as soon as we sell them, there's a house on them and they're taxable, which is not realistic. So you're looking at probably about a 20-year cost recovery on those lots. So.
Okay, looking at the next area.
Next slide.
So this is the Oak Crescent extension piece, just kind of a aerial view and street view. So that's the extended version of potential design. So as you can see, there is some faint contour lines there, but be looking at 15 lots without the ability to utilize a lot of the land around the turning circle at the end, based on the topo and drainage in the area. We did have the engineers look at the grading for sanitary sewer, and it was determined that a pumping station would be required for both applications in this area. Just based on the invert of the existing sanitary that we would have to connect to with Tamarack Drive and the way that the grading is working. Next slide. So, yeah, fairly similar costing. Apologies for the red line there. That's because WSP added electrical servicing, which wouldn't apply to this development. But we made those adjustments. Aaron, you want
Yeah, sure. If you want to go to the next slide. So with HST or non-rebate portion of HST, the municipal capital growth program eligible construction costs would be just under 1.6 million. So our cost, before paving would be 773,000. The total construction cost with paving would be 2.1 million, which is about 140,000 per lot. Our total cash costs, assuming all lots were sold, and the value of these lots were a little bit lower than the ask and close, would be just above $1 million. And assuming a $200,000 assessed property value, which we assume they'd be a little bit lower in that area, it'd be 19 years. If there was multiple unit dwellings, that might increase the assessed value of those properties, which would reduce the kind of simple cost recovery, number of years to cost recovery. But still, you're looking at probably a 25-year cost recovery on that. In this program at this sharing, where everything's not eligible.
Next slide. So this is the shortened version of the development. 12 lots with a pumping station still required for that area. So as you can see, like at the bottom area of the turning circle, there's a natural drainage path there. So trying, like, obviously you couldn't develop in those areas where there's an existing broken street. Next slide. Looking at costs, the potential funding amount for that build out is $1.2 million essentially, and I'll turn it over to Aaron to talk through the costing for this.
Sure, Jay. So with, HST, the eligible construction cost would be 1.27 million. And so we would be eligible, our portion would be 638 of that. The paving cost would be $378,000. So the total construction cost with paving would be 1.65 million, 138,000 per lot. Our total cash costs, assuming all lots are sold, would be 777,000. If we don't consider if the lots weren't sold, our cash cost or construction cost would be just over 1 million. And that's an 18-year cost recovery on that, assuming all lots are sold and built immediately, which is unrealistic. So it's probably in the 20 plus years. And if the assessments are higher because there's multiple units in it, because I know that it is zoned for that, the cost recovery would be a little bit lighter if the assessment is higher, assuming all lots sold.
Probably a good time for questions. So that's the three proposals, what we had originally discussed, or the two proposals we had originally discussed, plus the addition of the revised shorter Oak Crescent extension.
So it's more expensive than we originally thought. And Terry, you had mentioned earlier too that paid sidewalks is applicable for this.
Yeah, so we have another proposal that you may wish to look at as well.
But do you want to review that first and then maybe kind of talk about everything as a whole?
Sure. Is that,
Is everybody okay with that?
Can't get any worse. Doesn't matter.
We'll just chat about the whole thing.
so one of the things we realized under accessibility, when we think about accessibility, first thing you think about is buildings. So if we have this building, we can always make improvements to our buildings. The biggest issue that keeps coming up on accessibility is sidewalks. It's the curb cuts, it's the condition of sidewalks, it's something that we discuss on a pretty regular basis, is the existing sidewalks and lack of repair replacement on that. So there is an option to submit a project for replacement of sidewalk at a 50/50 cost sharing agreement. I will say that it's very seldom that we see anything that's applicable to sidewalks. We've gone in on the AT projects because there's some funding with that. But this will allow us to replace sidewalks. And so what Jason has done is he's identified some of the worst areas that we talked about for potential replacement of sidewalks. And so I'll kick it back to Jason.
Sure thing. No, thank you, Terry. And it's exactly correct. Sidewalk replacement is applicable with this program under the eyes of accessibility. So we'd be potentially writing an application to improve pedestrian ramps with proper curb tapers, installing tactile plates, repairing not repairing, but replacing sections of broken panels and tripping hazards, replacing curb and driveway aprons where you have to, where the sidewalk is kind of up against existing curb. We'd also be looking at widening sidewalk to a more accessible cross section in areas where we could. The areas identified in red were sections of sidewalk previously identified by council and staff when talking through the sidewalk plan. And these areas haven't been completed yet. So if we want to switch to the next slide, I can talk through the areas a little bit. So Reynolds Street from Sydney Road to Bernard, all of these areas are in quite poor condition. And the application wouldn't necessarily have to be married to exactly these areas. There'd be some flexibility before we would submit to investigate some others. I just wanted to bring these forward because they were previously spoken of. So yeah, Reynolds Street is over 90 meters. Estimated costs are based on recent unit prices that we've seen from recent contractors doing similar work. For example, Brylon is currently doing a sidewalk project for us, and others that we've received from other municipal units. Hiram Street is a relatively short area from the fire hall to Embry. It's extremely poor. Granville Street from Kennedy Street to Pitt, that was identified by council. That's the area in front of the food bank. Bernard Street, and it's in that block between Kennedy Street to Sydney Road. We've taken out one side of the sidewalk there this summer, and this would look at renewal of the remaining sidewalk on that street. McSween Street from Prince to Granville, it's approximately 225 meters. We've been seeing increased pedestrian traffic on McSween Street with some of the improvements at our waterfront, especially in the summer, and having nice renewed sidewalk for people to walk up that steep hill will certainly be an accessibility improvement. Embry Street is quite poor as well. looking at the section from Hiram to connect to the new sidewalk on Nepean. Other areas could definitely be considered. What we're presented there now is just under a kilometer of sidewalk removal at a cost of approximately $548,000.
Okay.
And
So
The proposal,
sorry, these are all sidewalks that I know you have a prioritized list of sidewalks in terms of these are the ones that are in the absolute worst condition currently.
yeah, these are our sidewalk sections that we've previously spoken of and identified as areas that we had on our sidewalk renewal plan. We had hoped to do more this year with our own public works forces. It just didn't work out that way, that we're able to devote the time to the sidewalk renewal that we hoped. But certainly other areas could be considered and easily costed. Yeah.
This is the exact same program as the one we were considering for the sewer and water installation?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the accessibility / sidewalk opportunity, and that's like truly 50-50. Like, it's not like we would have to pay for 100% or one.
well, it's essential work that we have to do at some point in time, and the dollars that are available that would support that. So, sort of the recommendation would be that we identify approximately $500,000 or a kilometer of sidewalk to be replaced. And whether it's these areas or council feels strongly about another area, that's fine. It all has to be done. But it would allow us to have $250,000 approximately given to the town to do work that we have to do. So it's a very practical application.
Yeah, is there time to pivot for that application in the time that we have remaining?
But yeah, definitely be good, yes.
Okay, so what's the thoughts of council? And the other question that I have, sorry, can't think sorry to council. So with regard to the other projects that we've identified, like the Aspen and the Oak Crescent, can we look for other funding streams that could potentially fit in, like ICIP, or maybe good to be able to get more than $50 just on the underground infrastructure piece of those? I don't know if anything out there exists.
So there is an ICIP green fund that the province hasn't opened up in a couple of years. That's where we're doing the improvements to our water, our water systems. Mm-hmm. And that's where other municipalities have done similar type of work in extending sewer and water. Okay. And so if we look back at those numbers, they're pretty. I mean, the simple payback is just not there at this point in time, but it becomes much more attractive if our contribution becomes much less.
Yeah, a lot more, because the ICIP, is that just cost sharing federally, or is there provincial? Yeah. Okay, so you'd have more.
Our contribution would be
more sharing happening.
27% instead of 50%.
Right. So I guess we'll start with Mark, maybe. Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted me to start with you. You're rubbing your forehead. I feel like you have something to say.
I don't know if we can, I guess, not them over there, but afford to go forward at a 50% cost, at the cost of everything today. It's very high. Mm-hmm. And 27% is a lot better than 50.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd like to see expansion and something done, but affordability is a big thing too. and return. The sidewalk one, with this program, it covers everything that council discussed earlier in their plan for sidewalks. And if we were to do that, then council would probably during budget time discuss the next section or plan, what sidewalks are gonna be done in concession. And look at that. But, I mean, I guess Terry would know more if there was some kind of a program coming down the pipeline at 27% federally, or, I mean, I think every municipality is probably in the same position.
Yeah.
So federally and provincially, governments are probably gonna have to step in. I mean, municipalities can't sustain at those prices. And I was gonna ask questions, maybe like on the electrical, is that buried electrical or?
For Aspen it is.
It is, this one, Oak Crescent is not.
Correct.
So that's more land we give up, and I remember discussing that because we have to give easements to Nova Scotia Power, plus a pumping station there, which is a cost to operate. The lots, you said the smaller lots, I was always under the impression that the smallest lot in Port Hawkesbury would be 60 by 100.
That you could build a house on.
Yeah.
Me too.
60 by 74 or something. I think that's what you mentioned.
Yeah, like scaled off the lot size.
Right. We would probably have to go into a land use, change our land use to smaller the lot, to make the lot smaller in tandem. So I noticed that. And that's my opinion. I just think that's very expensive for either site for development.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Huey, did you want to go next?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't really have any comments right now, just that everything costs money. We've been saying that since years. Everything costs money and it's going to catch us up to us somewhere. A couple of years ago, we were talking about sidewalks, we went to 18 cents. We're putting in sidewalks, now we're talking about housing. We're back to sidewalks again. So I'm just going to have to try to digest this. So,
Okay, Jay?
Without houses, we're not gonna need sidewalks. I'd like to know a price for our public works to do the sidewalk. I'd like to know what it costs instead of putting concrete to put pavement. Look at Tamarack Drive, that sidewalk down Tamarack Drive has been there for over 20 years. It's pavement. We're not doing any work to it because it's not falling apart. It's easier to maintain, it's cheaper to maintain. Salt doesn't affect the pavement near as bad as it does concrete. So I'd like to have the option of putting, if we're gonna do sidewalks, I'd rather have the option of pavement. I did talk to Jason last week about the housing. It is stackable. So we could look for other options for federal funding. From an email that I received last week, I believe there's federal funding available for infrastructure projects. We just have to prove that we're gonna go ahead and that we have somebody ready to develop. I personally don't want to support that sidewalk project with concrete. Hearing Mark say, we're gonna do these sidewalks this year potentially, and then in March, pick another section, and we're gonna do that at 100%. So if we're gonna pick a section, let's pick everything and see what we get. But let's not look at one sidewalk project today at 50% and then in 4 months to get together again and pick another big section that we're gonna spend 100% at. That doesn't make sense to me. If we're gonna do it, let's
apply for
That's
all of the sidewalks that need replacing at 50 cent dollars versus,
Instead of in March sitting down and saying, okay, we have another kilometer we want to do at 100%.
Well, I'm just looking at affordability, like,
yeah,
if council
you're
wants
wanting
to
to take,
pick more sidewalk and take $1 million,
you're,
as
you want to take
50%,
advantage of the 50 cent dollars.
that's all I was saying.
Right, so if we're gonna do a sidewalk, let's look and see what we're gonna be thinking about putting in our next budget and put it in this proposal at the 50 cent dollars.
I don't disagree, it's
But
affordability, like right now, what was it, 250,000? So affordability, can we double it and go to 500,000? Can we maybe go to $1 million and get $1 million from, out of this project, or apply for it and have
So
$2 million
2
worth
kilometers
of
of
it?
sidewalk instead of 1 kilometer.
It's our, what I'm saying is it's affordability to us.
Yeah,
And as Terry was saying, there could be other streams of money later. This is December 13th, is it, or that this has to be in. So this is the 6th.
This is the 7th and we're here for sidewalks.
Oh, I know, but that's
it's
an option.
No, I know, but
Okay, Lane?
So I agree with the housing, we need the housing, the affordability is not there, the information that's being presented, and then the number of years of return and stuff. We need to take advantage of a program like the ICP program. So this is to me, an appropriate way to go is with the sidewalk. And maybe it is to look at doubling it up because we're gonna, as it's just been discussed, we're gonna be looking at sidewalk next spring as well, part of our budget. So why not include that with this application? And like you say, we were looking at contributing way over $1 million on these other projects. So if we were doing this and we doubled up what's being proposed, it'd be $500,000. And I think that certainly I would support us doing that, making the application for the sidewalks. I personally, rather than see asphalt for the sidewalks, I'd rather see the sidewalks be concrete, cement. That's my preference. So anyhow, those are my comments.
Okay, so I guess back over to you, Terry.
Well, just one comment, I think the affordability comment is very appropriate. So if we look at, we can't look at just today and what may be considered in budget. We have to consider what we'll be looking at in budget in spring. So, I mean, already I've heard about plans for a utility truck for the fire hall. We deferred the replacement of the Peterbilt truck. We have a public works building that's going to cost twice as much as the insurance payment. So those are all things. You can't spend more money than you have. And we're not allowed to do that. So I certainly understand saying, okay, we have a chance to do this, let's do as much as we can. Let's do 2 kilometers, or let's do 3 kilometers, but it's affordability. So what can we afford? And the thought from our staff discussions around what's affordable was around that $250,000 mark. So of course we could replace everything, but can we afford to replace everything? We know going through a budget process that we just can't. So there's competing priorities that we have to look at.
And I think in the past too, Terry, like I think cost aside, it was also having the time to do.
We much prefer our own staff do that, but we've seen what happens when we count on that. So we've got very little sidewalk done this year because of other priorities of using our own staff, and that's just the way that's happened this year. There's other years that we've been much more productive on that. We've got a lot more, but with rainstorms, with any number of other things that we've had to deal with, that didn't occur this year. So the only way ensuring that we do that is going through a tender process and awarding that and having it done by a company that's what they do. All they do is sidewalks. They have the gear, they have the forms, they have everything. It goes, as we've seen on Old Sydney Road, it goes probably 10 times faster than we do. right there.
So that pricing is with another contractor, not us, right?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the wishes of council here? Do we want to put in an application for the municipal capital growth program?
I'd like to hear a little more from Aaron.
I think, I know we're looking at projects that have a cost of $1 million or $1 million plus price tag. I've not said that that's affordable or that's something that's recommended. I absolutely think that housing needs are dire across the province. But if we're not able to sell lots that are serviced at $25,000 when we've been advertising them, you know, the demand doesn't seem to be there for purchasing lots, the ones that we have available. So I do think that it may be better to look at this at a different time. And just, I did a quick calculation here of an ICIP project where we're doing the same work on Aspen Close, for instance, at a 27% contribution. And all of the cost, I would think, would be eligible, and we're at a $573,000 contribution versus a $1.5 million contribution. So there's a huge difference, right? I think I love to leverage, and we've talked about that significantly. And anytime we have an ability to leverage, I am more comfortable based on the commitments that we know we have coming forward that are significant and growing in fleet, in building. You know, to spend $1 million on sidewalk, I think would be a bit rich, based on, I would not recommend that. But again, it's council's decision. So I'm more comfortable at the $500,000, $600,000 value. And I think that the leveraging opportunity is great around that. Yeah, that's where I would think we would be at.
Okay, do you have any other follow-up questions, Mark?
And we're not growing again, so.
No, that's fine.
I do have a question.
Yep.
What service lots do we have in town that are not selling? We just sold 9, did we not?
4.
That are serviced and in a good area. I said it at this table 24 or 30 months ago. If we're not ready, they're not going to move here. We see that one guy comes in and takes up everything, every good lot we have. We have nothing to offer right now for good housing lots. And if we don't do it now, Inverness County, Richmond County, Mulgrave will all grow while Port Hawkesbury stays under 3,000 people. I've been saying this for 2.5 years. We're not ready. Everybody at the table says we need to be ready. We're not ready. It's that simple. And the frustration level is starting to get high.
There's 8 service lots on Elm Court. You don't have to spend a thing. That's beside the point. So there's 4 properties sold. Those properties haven't moved yet. It's good to see some improvements, some brush cutting and stuff. There's another 9 properties where that person has first right of refusal. We've had 2 people come forward on lots. One was sold, and the other one that the Michael Bombs had decided to buy. So people are not knocking down the door trying to buy lots. There's no question about that. We see lots of developers. We see lots of developers that have an idea that they want to move forward. We've also shown them lots where they can do that. So and that's just ours. That's not private lots that are being sold. So unfortunately, I mean, it was nice to see a house being built this year, but we had 1. So when a development is moving forward, if you look at an Antigonish or a Truro or say, let's say Bridgewater, where there's 3,000 houses in development right now, those lots aren't selling for $25,000. Those lots are selling for $100,000. So when those lots sell for $100,000, then the simple payback works, but it doesn't if we're at where we're at. That's the difficulty. So if we see an opportunity, a reasonable opportunity to be able to provide an incentive for a developer to come in and do that and make that more attractive, that's a really good thing. And I thought we had that based on the old estimates that we had. So if we could have taken that $400,000 that was originally estimated by Straight Engineering and said, yeah, let's put sewer and water down Aspen Close, let's put sewer and water down Oak Crescent Extension, and pay $200,000 for it, there's a really good argument for simple payback, but that's not the case. So when we looked at revised estimates of what's happened over the last 2 years, and it still seems high to me, I can't get my head around it, but that's what we're being told, then the payback is not there for that. That's what we're trying to say. So we don't want another Unity Drive. We don't want any number of areas that municipalities have developed and they've sat vacant, where there's been public money expended and not utilized. So that is the danger around it. And yes, we've had developers, but no, we haven't had a developer invest in this area with our properties. We've seen some development on Reeve Street. We've seen a new office building, 3,000 square foot office building being constructed, and renovations for daycare space and previous work, but we haven't seen people come forward and actually put money forward for residential development, with the exception of the homes.
So through you, so I'm hearing that in 2 years that these estimates have over doubled for water and sewer. Where's it gonna be in another 2 years? Where's it gonna be in 3 years? When we decide, now is the time. We had 2 years for those estimates. We couldn't find a funding stream anywhere to get this done at 50% in the last 2 years?
Absolutely not. If there was a funding stream that became available, first of all, this council is aware of every funding stream that occurs. If you were aware of that, then I hope you'd bring that forward. If I was aware of that, the same as we did with this program, I bring that forward to council. And so we try to take advantage of that. And this has been an extremely, if you want to talk to contractors or anyone in that construction world, being able to estimate in today's economy is extremely difficult. But no, you do not see costs double, triple within 2 years in a regular period of time. So this was an extremely unusual period of time where there was logistic chain issues, there was the cost of building materials spiked, interest rates spiked, all of these things happened at the same time. The estimate is the estimate. We're just trying to say what we think this will cost. We don't know exactly what it will cost until we tender and award the project.
Just a question on the potential opportunity around the 50-cent sidewalks. So we typically have a budget of 78,000 or something along, like,
I think
just for general repairs, or maybe it's.
we put 75 to 100, I think, in for asphalt, and we put about 20 in for sidewalk. That's using our own forces.
That's over and above what we normally budget.
We've added in a little bit in the last couple of years, maybe 30,000 or something. I have to go back and look.
I'm just wondering how independent this potential project would be from what we normally take on as a public
10
works
times.
entity.
Significantly more.
10 times the amount.
So we wouldn't, the expectation would be that this would be contracted out for the 1 kilometer of sidewalk in addition to what our public works normally does.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if the, through you, your worship, if the construction season is not taken up with other weather events and whatnot, this could absolutely be compounded by the work of public works that they typically do in the summer construction season.
Yeah, so if we were to go with a project like this is independent of what Public Works can or can't do on a normal
Yes.
season. Okay, that was my question. I wasn't sure if that would be rolled in with what the work they normally do.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, Your Worship, through, just as to what Jason was talking about, or Councillor Cohen. I agree with be ready, get something done. The costing, I think Aaron mentioned something like $100,000 or more for lots, like to develop. And we're looking at this, I think everybody around the table would love to do it. But one thing we never said was I've seen lots sell for 25,000, maybe 32,000. So I guess if you're talking project like that, is any one of our lots, do you think they'd sell for $100,000 or $120,000 in the town of Roxbury? But that's what it's going to be worth. So, I mean,
You have to find a way
we
to
have to find a way.
reconcile getting,
And as Aaron worked it out, like at the 27%, if that ever comes available, it makes it that much more reasonable. And like, I don't disagree that like, to get something done, but again, I say affordability, but I mean, the lot, after you put in Oak Crescent Extension, that lot's not gonna be worth 25,000. I can assure you. It'll sell for $75,000 to $100,000, and it might sit there for 10 years, because no one's gonna buy it. You can't sell a lot for 25,000 that costs you 100,000 plus to develop. I mean, that just doesn't, that's not good business.
okay. Blaine?
I guess what I was thinking after the last meeting, when we were seeming to be so eager and enthused about this program, and we were tossing around the idea of looking at an option A and an option B. Let's apply for both and see where things land. And if we got approved, well, we'll go ahead. And I was thinking, really, that isn't practical. And that's what I would have brought forward anyhow about looking at the two options, because in 2 months' time, we're into budget stuff. And just as through your worship, just as Terry said, there's already things that we know that are coming up with budget. And if we're going to deal with them, we have to have the financial means to deal with those things going forward. So I think we're all, appreciate Councillor Coyne's frustration. We've all, as he said, been preaching that we need to be ready, just as Councillor McIver has said as well. But it's got to be affordable. One question though I have is, if we were to get something together, let's say for I forget the proper name, is it the Rapid Housing Accelerator Fund? If we were to make an application for a project, my question would be, what property we'd be looking at to be able to develop a project on?
Okay, so I guess we'll have to leave that question with staff for now. I don't think you're prepared to have that conversation this evening.
Yeah, we've had various conversations on what kind of housing, but it depends on the type that we're looking for. So if it's multi-unit, 10-unit, apartment type thing, if it's townhouses, if it's duplexes, if it's single family or whatever that is, it would be single family. Then we looked at various areas, and we worked, even New Dawn Enterprises has shown 3 potential locations that we talked about, and are interested in moving forward on in partnership with Leaside for transition housing. So yeah, there's 3 sites there. There's more that we indicated. So if we have that rapid housing initiative, which you indicated, which is all costs, then yeah, it makes perfect sense to open up one of these, well, probably not Aspen Close because it's not designed for that, but the extension of Oak Crescent or another area off Tamarack or off Spruce or off wherever, because that is the cost of constructing that unit. That's not constructing an incentive for a developer that we hope is going to come. That's a real cost that's going to be directly attributable to that project.
So, sorry, so you're saying that through that fund, the monies would be there to do the development of a site?
Oh, to service the site, yes, to provide access and
Great.
for sewer and water.
At 100%?
That's what we've seen with the.
Yeah.
With some programs, it just depends what the program is, of course.
Anyhow, I guess.
If it's just CMHC, that's completely different. That's a subsidy to the.
So we should be, anyhow, another conversation, but we should be looking to get something together and to submit an application for the rapid housing program.
Okay, so just to get us back on this
Yep.
topic, the
Yep.
municipal capital growth program, does council wish to forfeit application altogether? Do we want to consider the sidewalk one? What's the wishes of council here?
Well, my opinion is we're not forfeiting it. We're going to we should be putting an application in and support what's been proposed for the sidewalks.
Okay, Mark?
I think at this time, through you, your worship, that I would agree with Councillor McCrory, that not to forfeit it. And from what I heard, I think we can afford to do the 50% of the sidewalks that we identified.
Put some wiggle room.
Yeah, there's probably a little wiggle room, but.
Okay, Councillor Coyne?
I'd say put it to a vote.
Okay, Councillor McDougall?
I don't know, your worship, through you. Everything seems to be all over the board here, so I'm not really.
So, I guess-
Up here, like I say, we seem to be round in circles.
Okay, just to give you a little bit of an update, and apologies if you're not hearing everybody's comments around the table, but there were the original options, but the new option presented by staff is the 50
No,
cent
I heard
dollars.
that too.
Okay,
Yeah, I heard that.
okay,
We discussed sidewalk 3 years ago. And then we went to 18 trails. We weren't going to do sidewalks. Now we're back to sidewalks.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you for a moment. Could you repeat that because you were cutting in and out? Could anybody else hear? No. Could you repeat that just so council can hear what you said?
Yeah, I'm not in a very good spot here. I'm at work and it's kind of busy. So I'm just taking on half what you guys are saying also. The thing is, what we did 2 or 3 years ago was we discussed sidewalks. And we decided we were not going to do sidewalks, we're going to do 8.
Can you translate?
Yeah. He said 3 years ago, we were talking about sidewalks. 2 years ago, we went from sidewalks to AT trails. Now we're going back to sidewalks, which is exactly the point I was trying to make earlier.
Well, doing the sidewalks, is the material that we're using to make the sidewalks? Like, we're not locked in with concrete? Like, I guess, could staff comment on that?
There are 2 different applications. So active transportation is used in certain applications where there's room for that, where there's room where it's appropriate to connect one area to another. Sidewalk is basic infrastructure for persons to walk on, typically in residential areas or in commercial areas. The issue of asphalt, I think if you ask anyone from any municipality with respect to the durability, the constructability of installing asphalt sidewalks no one is going to say that's a good idea. No one that I know of anyway. I mean, you see that in very small municipalities and rural municipalities, where the situation is dictated because it's the cheaper short-term solution to do that. So if we look at areas in cities, they might patch a piece of sidewalk from here to here in the wintertime with asphalt, because that's the only thing that can be done. There's issues with even putting it in properly. So when you go down to that width of the typical width of the sidewalk, there's spreaders. Spreaders aren't typically available for that.
We've been through this already this year. There is a spreader available. Jason just mentioned that we're going wider than normal sidewalks. I'm tired of hearing excuses.
So when we were talking about AT trails before, it was to take advantage of 50-cent dollars. Is that correct?
It was in some cases, it was 27-cent dollars. In most cases, it was 27-cent dollars.
Okay, so we do have an opportunity for 50-cent dollars for sidewalks. So I guess we have a short window. If council is going to have staff or direct staff to put in an application. So we can either not put an application in or put an application in, but we do have to come to a decision tonight.
Put a motion on the floor.
Someone willing to make a motion?
There is a draft recommended motion. It's just that if we're going to move forward with this, we do need a resolution tonight. So it was left blank as to what we were to put in there, but the resolve the town of Hawkesbury approves the submission of application through the Municipal Capital Growth Program and my suggestion at this point in time, because we're not exactly sure where we're going, is for the accessibility and improvements to sidewalks in the town of Port Hawkesbury with the dollar value not to exceed whatever we feel, if it's $500,000 or $600,000.
Okay, let's wish us council on that.
I'd make a motion that we submit an application to the province of Nova Scotia Municipal Capital Growth Fund for, but maybe like there's some flexibility yet. So there might be some other potential pieces of sidewalk that haven't been identified here that council might identify as should be included in this. So I would say make an application for an amount of $400,000.
Okay, for $400,000?
Yep.
Is that to leverage us
400,000.
2,200 for each? Sorry,
I think what he's saying is an $800,000 project.
is that what you're saying? Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to put forward an application for somewhere between 1 to 2 kilometers of sidewalk at a max amount of $800,000.
For a maximum contribution from the town of up to 400,000.
That it would be leveraged. Great.
It might be simpler just to say the project value would be $800,000 for the total project value of $800,000.
But
Sure.
not necessarily being the 800,000.
The project value not to exceed $800,000, and contribution will be based on the amount
Right.
of the actual cost.
Sure.
So we're identifying a maximum
Yes.
of a project at 800. It doesn't mean that it has to cost that.
Right.
We just want to cap it at that.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, is everybody clear with that motion? Any discussion on the motion?
Question.
Okay, the question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Contrary minded?
Nay.
Huey, did you want to vote? Or are you abstaining?
I'm abstaining, and abstaining vote is a nay vote. Yes. You guys that went through the
I know that. Thank you though.
Robert's Rules of Order know that.
Thank you, Mr. History. Appreciate that. All right, so the motion is approved. The next item we have is an update on Public Works for shop construction. So over to staff for that report.
So the last time we looked at the project, we asked council to consider expanding the public works site and a location for that. And the project included the renovation of the existing building, keeping the existing structure in concrete in place and we were asked to go back and have a look at other options. So we have gone back and looked at other options. We've also gone to the marketplace to try to get some surety on estimates of building costs. And so we've done that. We've had submissions from 3 builders on that. This is what the new proposed location is. So it's pretty much where the existing site is. So the old building will come down. New building will be constructed on that site. The new building will be 6,900 square feet. The old building is 6,400 square feet, so it'll be twice the size of the existing building.
Sorry?
Hold on, 69 and 64 is not double.
Oh, sorry, 34.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
69 and 34, so it's double the size. The doors are 16 by 16. Former doors are 14. Some of the biggest door was 14 by 14. So it'll be a bigger unit. This is what it looks like. I think you've seen something similar to this. So it's a 4 bay. It includes a wash bay and a modern administrative area with locker rooms, staff rooms, office, general storage.
This is updated from the last design.
Yeah, it's been updated any number of times, but this is the 4 bay option. You've seen a 4 bay option, a 3 bay option. You've seen differences in the administrative area.
Okay.
But this is the last design or the current design that we have based on the site change. So that's removing the old building, constructing on the existing site, expanding the existing site.
All right, questions?
So, Your Worship, through you to Terry, so we're not looking to acquire the property from Brian Anderson as part of this. Is that correct?
That's not, and typically property discussions we have in camera.
Oh, sorry, yes.
So I didn't
Yep.
include that, but this does not require the acquisition of more land at this point in time. Do you think that expanding that site is something that we could consider? I think there's certainly value in that.
Councillor, if you do want to ask that question, we can move in camera before adjournment.
Through your worship, a question to Terry. So the positioning of this building, it's not going to be in the same footprint as the old building? Is it?
It'll be on top of the existing footprint.
Right on top of
Much
it?
larger, yep. So the only way to make the site usable that way was to do that.
Okay, that's what I, like for gravel storage and stuff
Lay
like
down
that,
areas.
lay down. It
So
works out.
there's no issues then with turning radiuses, et cetera.
No, we flipped this building around any number of ways on the site. This is the one that works best as well. Existing.
With the existing footprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, Huey, do you have any questions online?
No questions, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Coy?
Yes, through your worship. I did hear Terry mention that they've got pricing from 3 different contractors. Be nice to go into in camera today. Let's get this information to us so we can not wait another 2 or 3 weeks to hear the information and have to take 2 or 3 weeks to make a decision. We'd like to get that information tonight so we can advise staff on what to do with it sooner than later.
just maybe I can clarify that.
Sure.
So we've collected that information, not in formal tender, but a collection of prices for estimating purposes. So what has to happen is has to, maybe I'll show the schedule here. It's just that's the renderings that we have. I can send this
Thanks
to
for
you as well.
consulting.
So on the schedule, we're looking at, if it's the wish of council, we'll issue a demolition order as early as next week. The RFP for the pre-engineered building will be ready on December 19th. It'll be to us before then, but it'll go out by then. Warden purchased the building January 18th. Construction tender award at the end of March, start of foundations April 11th when the soils will be in proper condition for that.
So, through your worship, I don't know how we can say, yeah, go ahead and do that if we don't have any idea what this is gonna cost. Like, if you've got some estimates, that'd be nice to know.
So we do have
But that
estimates.
shouldn't be brought up here, I don't think. I think that should be in camera, correct?
Absolutely, it can be brought up in camera. If there was something to be brought up in camera, we would have identified that as an in-camera item.
So are the estimates?
These are what the estimates look like. This is based on an estimate from the architect with changes, with the existing site changes and change in buildings. So the 4-bay garage, which we've seen some pricing on from pre-engineered building providers, $360,000, doors and windows $125,000, concrete $100,000. Staff areas, so that's a wood frame construction, and we'll still look at options around that. That still could be steel frame construction. $300,000 mechanical and electrical, $120,000 demolition, with some safety net there around $30,000. Total of $1 million. We look at contingency at this point, should be significant. We said $300,000. Engineering, which is completion of design, but there's also material testing. There's soils and concrete survey, those types of things. $100,000, tax of $62,000, for a total value of $4.5 million.
Okay.
It's a Class B estimate.
Any other information as per your report, Terry, on this item?
No,
So is this for information, or do you need council to make some sort of decision to proceed?
well, so we took a proposal forward which would have included, it looked at another site layout, another location. We were asked to relook at that, and so that's what we've done. So we've taken this back, and we're just looking for feedback from council. Are we okay to move forward with the schedule that we've presented and based on the budget that we've presented?
Okay, thank you. What is the wishes of council?
Through you, your worship, a question to Aaron. With the insurance, is the 1.5 reasonable and
So through your worship, the 1.5 is what we have in budget. So we have this in capital plan already
for this building?
for this amount. Yep, which includes a portion external, which is insurance proceeds.
Okay, any follow-up questions?
No, your worship.
Okay.
Prepared to make the motion to go forward with what was
Sure,
presented.
if you want to make the motion, then we can have more discussion if need be.
Yeah.
I'll
So,
second it.
okay, so we do have a motion on the floor. Any other questions or any discussion? Councilor McQuarrie.
No, your worship.
Councilor McDougall.
No questions, your worship.
Okay. Any other follow-up questions from either of you? Okay, so
Question.
we have a motion on the floor. The question has been called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded.
Aye.
Okay, the motion is approved.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything remaining on that agenda item, Terry?
No, there's not, your worship.
Okay, we'll move on to development zone bylaw.
I'm going to hand this to Aaron.
Thank you. Through your worship, so we've been having some conversations around the commercial development district support area bylaw. And I want to, before we go to first reading, I wanted to just discuss it again with council where it is a significant bylaw. The area is all the C5 zone that's been identified as development zone or potentially development zone. And just in thinking about this, kind of following conversations and discussions around the bylaw, the intent of this legislation was to encourage growth in areas that there hasn't been growth. So to encourage growth in new areas or areas that we're struggling with growth. And although we haven't had significant growth in the town of Port Hawkesbury, we have had development on Reeve Street. And I think, so I think just in looking for some data on that, in 2023 for our budget, we had 16 accounts, commercial accounts that had a growth of $20,000 or more in the town of Port Hawkesbury. 3 of those were on Reeve Street. The value of those 16 accounts, the growth in those 16 accounts was just over $2 million, and the growth relating to Reeve Street was $1.3 million. Similarly, like in 2022, we had 12 properties commercial properties with growth over $20,000. 5 of them were on Reeve Street. The total growth of those properties that grew over $20,000 was $5.5 million, and Reeve Street made up $4.7 million of that. We know we've been struggling with commercial growth and residential growth, but seriously with commercial growth. So we've been able to balance with growth that we've seen on Reeve Street. So I'm just wondering if council wants to consider a more limited area maybe for the development zone. And if that doesn't, I know we've talked about the CRVS site and that area being where we haven't had growth yet or development yet. So just wondering if council wants to consider looking at that a little differently, where the growth on Reeve Street has allowed us to balance our budget in previous years where we've been struggling with commercial growth.
Maybe just to start off here, maybe we can ask for like a little bit of a history around the thought process for the perimeter of the commercial development zone. So you chair that, if you want to give us a little bit of history there, Jay.
Yep, so when this was first brought to planning advisory, I thought the first intention would have been to basically this block, so from McDonald's basically to the TD Bank.
Right.
Somehow, through discussion with the council and the PAC, that area grew substantially.
Yeah.
And a lot of that at a request of everybody's sitting at this table. The planning advisory committee, one member did want us to add in another section, and that was voted down.
Okay.
Industrial park, because we felt that the size that we have now is plenty big.
Too big, maybe.
But made sense to try to create more business on Reeve Street.
Right.
And Aaron's absolutely correct. We have that new government office building going up, which is great. I think the last new building is probably either the spa or the dealership where Running Man is. So
TD.
Or TD, yeah.
Enpro Realty.
So it's all in that one little section.
Right.
And I think that the intent was to try to get more of the business here.
Right.
So yeah, that's
a gist. Like, I know when we first started talking about a commercial development zone, it was kind of just spur on interest in the CRVS site for us, for council. But I guess it's up to council with regard to that size. I mean, it's not set in stone.
I feel like it wouldn't be, through your worship, sorry. I just feel like I wouldn't be, for my, I feel like I wouldn't be doing this process justice if I didn't bring that up. In, knowing how we've been, knowing where the growth has been, knowing the struggles we've had, I completely understand the rationale around looking at this, but I do have concerns about, especially at that 10-year, 10% in the first year, 20% in the second year, like that's a long time to get up to that 100. It's 10 years to get you up to that growth that we've been seeing in 1 year, right? And that we've been using to balance. So I feel like it's important for council to be aware of that and understand, some of the concerns that financial concerns that we have around that. And I think if, it is the opportunity to have discussions around that, and if the decision is that we want to continue on at full tilt, like 10-year maximum incentives, the entire area, that's the decision of council, and I'm not interfering in that. I just want to ensure that you're aware of, the struggles we've had, how we've been balancing, and, another option is to, put a little bit more limitation on the bylaw right now, and you can change the bylaw in future as well if the results aren't what you're expecting.
So like, my question would be, if we wanted to start off a little smaller than maybe the entire stretch of Reeve Street, we can grow that out?
You can change your development zone.
But we can't choose a development zone and change our minds.
You can, but if individuals are in the program, they're
That's
locked
what I
in
mean,
for the
like-
10-year period, right? So if
I'm just trying to wrap my head around. I haven't been part of this, so sorry for all the questions.
One of the reasons for this development zone was exactly the letter that we sent not long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to develop that commercial district. And it was seen as a very good opportunity to be able to ask the province to change the legislation and really,
Around that housing piece.
really get the province's attention to say, yes, you know what, we're going to allow your units over 6 units to be allowed to create this in this development zone and get the same tax benefits, because what we're seeing is we're not getting housing built, we're not getting high density housing built. So we were kind of trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak.
my recommendation would be, if you want to look at the entire area that's currently designated, to shorten the window of the length of time where you ramp up to full assessment. Just my recommendation, you can take it or leave it.
Through you, your worship. Question to Councillor Klein. This, is there any particular, I guess, piece of property? Was it the CRVS property that sparked this on?
I feel like, yeah.
Well, I think, through your worship, I believe that the interest in the old arena property, the interest in the CRVS lot, the conversations that developers have been having on the lot beside the Curling Club, most of the conversations we're having with potential housing developers for high density are in this square. So that's kind of what brought this on. I'm okay with shortening or asking council to shorten that boundary.
Square block.
Well, from,
But I do want to see, and I respect Aaron's opinion, but I do want to see the 10-year tax incentive. I think that's what's going to draw those apartment buildings in when we get that changed. And it's not if we get it changed, because we will get it changed, I have faith. And I also believe that on the commercial side, since the first discussion of this development zone, there's been a lot more interest in the lot next door to us. Whether it's coincidental or not, I'm not sure, but there has been.
Okay, so you're, go ahead.
through you, your worship. So the block you're looking for would be from Reynolds Street to McSween Street?
Yes.
On this side
Yeah.
of the street.
Reeves and
Reeves, Macquarie Drive.
But everything on the inside of that block, not properties across the street around that block.
Well, I mean, that's what the discussion has been, is kind of focusing, from the PAC was focusing on this side of the
A lot of
road.
that property is owned by the municipality.
Right.
It gives us a little bit more.
Okay.
Well, it can only be used for municipal land too, right? Can it not?
No,
No?
private, it's also for
Okay.
private, but that would give us,
It gives us another tool in our toolbox.
so when you're saying that square block, I guess, and then, I know I'm asking this question again, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. It's on this side of Reeve Street.
Yes.
So it wouldn't be like where the church is or the Tim Hortons.
That's
or-
right.
Okay. So just that square block that goes all the way around Macquarie Extension.
And council can decide that as well, right?
Because originally we did discuss that.
That was the original ask.
Yeah, and,
I mean, if we want to, you know what, if it's working really well and we want to grow it out, we can.
right, you can change,
And
right?
maybe that's what we pilot it like that first. I'm fine with that.
So my other question, through you, your worship, to Councillor Coyne, is the 10-year, I guess, time frame. Is that important to this project? As Aaron was stating, it's a long time to get to 100%. Is there a way to look at, it still looks favorable with shortening that?
I think, through you, your worship, I think that the 10-year, 10% increments every year is what was brought to the planning advisory committee. And that's kind of what has been done in past practice within the province. And it really is an incentive. And I strongly feel that a majority, if not all of the development that we'll get in that development zone, we probably wouldn't have the tax incentive. So getting no tax for 5 years, or 50% of the tax over 5 years, I'll take that 50% over the 5 years, every time. So I don't mind it going up 10% a year. If it takes us 5 years to sell a lot, we're not getting taxes on those for those 5 years.
It is a recommendation from the planning advisory. Thank you, Worship.
And I guess, and I'm asking this question just because I wasn't part of any of those conversations and, you know, just curious if any conversations happen at that planning table. Was it ever considered, you know, if there is a certain spending threshold that could trigger 10 years and a lesser spending threshold that would trigger 5 years?
So the only spending threshold that.
So, because you want to encourage, if you want the 10-year.
The only spending threshold that was discussed was on renovations, and it had to be a certain amount in order for them to qualify for the break.
Okay, so there'd be no incentive if it was under a certain
That's
threshold.
correct.
And
It
was
was
that
$200,000, and it wasn't just renovations, it was the
any development
building permit had to be a
Building permit,
$200,000 value.
in
yeah.
order to trigger, but the 10-year savings threshold is only on what is new over and above the assessment value of that
That's
property.
right.
So it's growth and assessment, yes.
Growth and assessment on the new development or the
Or the
renovation.
expansion, yeah.
They
And I
don't,
think if you're looking at a smaller area, then I think I find the 10-year more palatable than where if it's a broad stroke across Fruit Street.
yeah, so that block would include the Causeway Shopping Center, for example,
Yes.
Yes, that's one big thing.
which, or like any private or municipally owned properties.
Yeah.
What about, okay, sorry, and again,
No.
I'm asking just because I
Good.
haven't been part of
It's
these
important.
conversations.
Really is.
What do we do with the provincial building about, like, that's a Lumen Trans, like, what do we do if they're improving their,
That's grant in lieu, so it's not
Yeah.
property tax, so I think it would be
Okay.
excluded.
okay, that was my, that's what I would be curious about.
Because it's not commercial taxable assessment.
So any properties
Commercial
owned by
exempt?
other orders of government or,
It's a good question, I can look into it, but it is taxed through a separate
what about
regime.
not-for-profitly, like, owned properties like The Rock?
So there, we
Is that,
exempt
that's
them,
within
They're
that
exempt,
perimeter,
they're exempt.
and so they're exempt anyway,
we
so.
exempt them annually from taxation right now.
Just
You
cross it
know,
off. on the-
100%, ask the question.
I'm just in my mind, I'm doing a mental inventory of everything that's in this.
It's a huge policy
perimeter.
decision, right? Like, so it's really important to have these conversations, so ask away.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out all the entities that are in that perimeter. And I mean, it's a good way to pilot that incentive, and if it's working really well, like, we might want to build that, like, extend it out outward. All right. And
I think
then,
at any time you can look at changing this.
thank you for
You want-
answering my questions, because I really haven't been part of those conversations.
You're not.
So I guess, now that, shamelessly used up all the question time. Any other questions? Huey, any questions online?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Your Worship. With all my answers.
Okay. So is there, okay, the consideration. So do we have to make any formal decision of council before we move this forward? Or do we just have you make those changes as per our conversation?
So this is gonna be municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw changes, so we're just gonna have to go to planning, the planner to revise that, that area, which will then be incorporated into, as a schedule on the bylaw, but yeah, so I don't know, timeline on that, maybe new year.
January.
Well, we'll see if they'll do it for us before December 19th. If it's ready before December 19th, we can hold first reading on it at that time. If not, it will be our first meeting in January 9th, I believe.
It's really, it's a small change.
Yes.
They should be able to do it for us by the 13th, and we can bring it back to the PAC by then. Because we have a PAC meeting on the 13th.
Yes.
So maybe we'll leave it with you. We do have a bit of a timeline. If we can expedite it, wonderful, and if not, first thing in the new year.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that one, Terry?
No, that's it.
Oh, so, Your Worship, so just before we move on, so where we're at is continuing on with the size of the area that was being proposed.
We're shrinking it to one
Shrinking it.
block.
To the original proposal.
From,
Runs to Sweeney.
right. And what was the original proposal?
They brought it down further, pretty much the whole length of Reeve Street.
So it's a C5 zone, so.
Yes.
All of zone.
Oh, C5.
So this limits the zone to an area which we're seeking more development on.
Oh, I know,
Focus
but
on-
we're reducing it from what was the original?
Oliver Street.
Reeve Street.
All of Reeve Street.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Yep, thank you.
Good.
But that does not forego our future ability to
Oh, no.
expand.
Yep. And with respect to terms, we're going with the 10-year.
That's how I
That's what-
understand it,
What I understand.
Okay.
which is more palatable since we have a smaller catchment area now.
Correct.
It's negotiation. Okay. All right, so we'll
It's all
move,
about
just before we adjourn, I do know that there were some in-camera questions. Is that something we still want to move in camera on with regard to the agenda item 5?
I think we already approved the site and to go ahead, didn't we?
I know, but there was still some request. Councilor McCrory, you had a question that was an in-camera item. So
Yeah.
I did want to ask if you want to pursue any other questions.
No, Your Worship, thank you.
Okay, I would ask for a motion of adjournment.
Moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
As reminded. The meeting is adjourned, and everybody grab a bite to eat.